Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really fun knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This big boy is the Kansept knives and Warhawk knives Superhawk, which is based on the original custom by Warhawk knives, which was called the Leviathan. When I unboxed this, there was a distinct familiarity with it. And initially I thought, yeah, this is very like, kind of 2010 to 2014, gives me that Medford, maybe Direware feeling. And I was like, that's what I'm feeling. And then I realized after reading on the blade Warhawk knives, that I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about Warhawk knives. A long time ago, I'd actually discussed with the maker doing a custom. And so it's amazing because I desperately wanted to handle one of his custom Leviathans. And all of a sudden, here we've got a production version from Kansept, which was so cool. So it was really fun getting to handle this. You guys know that I personally love big, crazy, overbuilt knives. I just think they're so fun. And this is not aggressively thick or anything, but it is absolutely a monstrous knife that is really totally functional and totally usable, but cumbersome, intentionally cumbersome in the best ways. So I'm going to share with you guys my thoughts. You can buy this knife right now, and I think it'll come to the surprise of many that while it is still an expensive knife, S35VN in titanium, it's a lot of knife. I think the base price on this, which by the way, it's the version with no holes. So if you hate holes, they make a version with no holes. The base price is $238, which is quite a bit less than what Kansept's direct competition would sell this same knife for. So I thought that was kind of neat. I will link this, all the different variations down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to Kansept for sending it in, and thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's measure this thing so you guys can see how big it really is. This is a big old boy. Overall length is 9. Man, it is legitimately almost 9 3/4 inches. I would say 9.65, 9.7 inches. The blade length is 4 inches. The cutting edge is about 3.65. Let's do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under original Goat and Others or the pinned comment. Here's my hulking cold steel AD10. This is a big knife. It is dwarfed by, it's completely dwarfed by this brawly sized pocket knife. This is like Nappa in Dragon Ball Z, and this is brawl. Like I remember as a kid thinking, oh my gosh, Nappa's huge. Like what a freak, right? And then you watch the Brawly movie, and you're like, oh my God, like this, what is this show I'm watching? That's kind of the comparison. I mean, if you've never watched that show, then you're like, what are you talking about? Here it is up against the AD 20.5, obviously much bigger. Spoiler alert, it's going to be substantially larger than all of the knives I typically use to do size comparisons with. The PM2 and Para 3, yeah, it's a lot bigger. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. Okay, how's the action on this knife? Kansept does a good job with action. So it's, not, if you're familiar with Kansept, it's no surprise that they have done this correctly. This is a big blade. You need a good heavy detent, and you need a flipper tab that allows you to get a lot of leverage, and you do. It works. It is a heavy detent, and if you're wondering, can you reverse flick it? You can, but you got to get to I got to get to the very bottom of this hole here and really dig. Gosh darn it! I wore this finger out. I really want to show off my finger strength here. I can do it. I can. I just did it. I can't. There's no strength left in this finger. This, in order to be able to utilize it properly for, like, you can pinch open it and roll it out, right? A regular slow roll, probably not going to happen. This is a heavy detent, guys. For such a huge blade, it was required. Your best bet is to light switch the flipper tab, and the blade will rock it out. It's very satisfying to flip this big of a blade. Not an incredibly thick blade. It's just so much material. But this, flipping it, it's just, oh my gosh. What an insane feeling to throw a blade that's that big, you know? So yeah, this needed to be bigger. And in fact, I think they probably should have extended it because I don't want the detent to be lightened. The primary way to deploy this, the best way to deploy this is definitely a flipper tab. I think it needs that. But if they just changed this and made it larger, you get leverage a little lower. I think it would be much easier for people who really want to reverse flick it or pinch open it or whatever, right? And still keep that same aesthetic. So that would be my critique on that. The other thing is this has an incredible amount of lock bar tension. I mean, oh my goodness. Lock bar relief cut is on the inside. Personally, I've always heard, and this is probably like a standard, like when you're comparing apples to apples, right? The stronger way to do it is to put the relief cut on the outside, but it's never been a problem for me, and I think a lot of it has to do with the individual model and how much material there is and how much lock bar tension and whether or not they got the geometry. It's not that simple. There's a lot that goes into it. In this case, you have an incredibly strong lock bar. There is a lot of force keeping that thing in place. It's heavy. There is a cutout to engage with it a little bit better on this side, but it's a sharp ledge. So the combination in this, I'm not so much concerned with it being on the inside, you know, or strength or anything like that. Honestly, I feel like it does kind of look better. You know, I go back and forth on that. I say it doesn't look better. It does, but whatever. But for me, it's just, it's not hard to disengage. It's just a little bit painful after doing it a couple of times. So just know, if you pick this knife up, you're going to be working against that lock bar a little bit, right? It's a little hardcore. Probably needed to be shaved down or scalloped in there a little bit. The action, fantastic. No double clutch. It's dropping shut, partially due to Kansept's ability to, you know, properly machine the inside of the knife and make sure the bearings are riding on smooth surfaces, all of that. Good tolerances, but also because you have a titanic, monolithic blade coming down, which you should be aware of. That's a big blade. It's a sharp blade, right? So just be careful with that. How about carry profile? I carried this for a day and a half, and it was fun, but it was just like, man, like there is no room for anything else in my pocket. It's not as thick as you'd think. It's only a little bit thicker than the Para 3. They could have gone totally overboard with this thing if they wanted to. They didn't. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3, you will notice this. I don't care who you are. This is going to be, unless you are exclusively carrying monstrous knives like this will be an adjustment for the vast majority of people if you really want to carry it. It is huge. I mean, these are tall. Like this is what I'd consider to be a tall knife, which is why I use it as a comparison, because it's a fantastic EDC knife that happens to be pretty tall. So it's good for people to kind of compare and be able to understand what sort of pocket experience they're going to have. This is huge. It's so much tall. It's enormous. We don't really need to get into the weeds of that. It just is. Let's do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I think that pivot is a T10 at least. I would be shocked to find out that it's just a T8, but if it is, that's fine. Yeah, it's the T10. And then these screws here are almost certainly a T8, which we don't need to put it in the driver. We have, yes, okay. And then also the pocket clip screws, which I love. Thank you for using the, oh, even the lock bar insert screw is a T8. Thank you for not putting T6 on this. It would have been stupid and looked stupid. T8 across the board, except for the pivot, which is a T10. That's great. Very, very simple construction. Very easy to take apart and put back together. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's weigh it. That's always a fun one when we're looking at overbuilt knives or big, stupidly, thunderously thick knives. Contoured titanium for both sides. Is it milled out for weight reduction? Yes, it actually is. Plus the holes, right? So the one without the hole is probably a little heavier. Solid titanium or full titanium backspacer, and a pretty big S35 VN blade. Pretty big is putting it mildly. The weight on this Titanic knife, milliliters isn't going to do us any good. The weight on this Titanic knife is an unsurprising 9.5 ounces. I mean, yeah, of course, right? Weight and balance. I mean, balance actually right behind the pivot. So that's good. If it's going to be that big, at least it's balanced, right? Usually my hard cutoff for a consistent EDC is about 6 to 6.5 ounces, right? I'll make exceptions here or there, but this is way over. So as much fun as I had carrying this, it is not something, honestly, that I would like dedicate to over a long period of time. But you can make that decision for yourself. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness, and then we can move into the meat and potatoes here. And there's a more meat than potato, if that makes sense. Let's grab right there. We're looking at not anything crazy. 157,000 is thick, but it's not nuts, you know? All right. I am so happy that Kansept is willing to work with designers who like to do wild and crazy things. There's Kansept really likes hawk bills. Maybe that's why their logo is shaped like that, right? But this is a big, crazy hawk bill sort of Medford meets Direware kind of frame, but it's still its own thing, right? I mean, it's not specifically one or the other, or I mean, it's got hints of a lot of different things, but it's still distinctly its own thing, and it is intentionally meant to be a big, crazy, ridiculous knife. These knives always confuse people who are very, you know, their mindset is utility, design, utility. It cannot be, why would it be any, it has to be utility. Then their brains come to the conclusion that the designers of these knives tripped over a rock and accidentally made something that's not 100% utilitarian. This is on purpose. It's on purpose. It's what this knife maker is fully capable of designing a basic, and I'm going to use the word boring, utilitarian knife. And it's most knife makers are capable of doing that because it's not really all that tricky. The blueprint for utility and it's all of its parameters is here. It's not a mystery. It's not that hard to make something, you know, I'm saying like if you have the skills required to make a knife, a basic utilitarian folder is not something that is a mystery to most of these people. They make stuff like this because after a long period of time, I have to imagine they just are like, I want to see what kind of wild and crazy stuff I can do, even if it's not the most practical thing in the whole world, which is very common. We see this with knife makers and knife designers all the time. It's honestly what attracts people to our community. Because if everything looked like the Buck 110 or the Benchmade Bug Out, then people would be like, yeah, it's a knife. Like, it's this stuff that grows our community and creates all this the dynamic, you know, the different types of people and different tastes. It's fun, right? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is a perfect EDC or that it's even kind of good for EDC, because it's not. It's huge and cumbersome, right? They have a recurve blade, but at least it is consistent. So you'll have that. I feel like the plunge grind on this is pretty good. You know, I don't know. I'm going to let you guys look at that if you want to. How does it feel in the hand? It feels glorious. This, I feel like I'm more powerful holding this. I feel like lightning may strike this, and I may transform into some ultra powerful warlord or something. It really feels like that. It's huge. There's so much room, and you can choke up. The jimping is unbelievably aggressive. It's been knocked down, but these are almost serrations, and because they're on the back of a swedge, this area is very narrow, so it's really carving into your finger. If you were to use this in a way where you needed the jimping, you better be wearing gloves, because this is going to hurt after one cut. I feel like you could do. Not that I'd recommend it on a folding knife. You could do some light chopping with this. This is heavy enough, right? There's so much weight in that blade. You definitely could. I don't know what this debris is all over the knife, but I'll get rid of that. I actually like the holes. I think if I were purchasing this, I personally would opt for the holes because it gives you something to look at. If you don't like the holes, there's a version of this is all plain, right? But there's nothing there. You can get it all silver, all plain. That's the basic version. So I do appreciate those holes. And I also appreciate that we've got a little bit of, like on this version, we have like kind of the brass hardware, and then we have the dark earthy bronze. The pocket clip, I can't decide if that's more Medford or more Direware. I'm trying to remember what Direware pocket clips look like. But it is completely and totally unique to this knife. This is a sculpted clip that is specific to... I have the Bodacious in my pocket today, but it's specific. Yeah. And, whether I was wearing sweatpants or jeans, I really thought that this would be a problem, but it's actually, with this not being solid material here, and it's probably sprung to be this way intentionally, there's not an enormous amount of, retention there. So it's pretty easy on the pocket. In hand, though, you will notice it. It's not cutting into me. It's just a big pocket clip. It's also a long pocket clip. So you're going to feel it squeezing on it. Not terrible, but incredibly noticeable. Every time you hold it, you're going to be pretty much aware the entire time of that huge clip. Big, choppy. This looks like something that was made by a company called Warhawk knives. I don't know what a Warhawk is, but if someone showed me a picture of this, I'd be like, that looks like a Warhawk, right? Obviously, like, what it means is it's a hawk used for war. Don't give me the lore on that. Don't do that. That's not what I was asking for. What I'm saying is what image pops into my head if you say Warhawk. It's not a hawk in, tactical gear or a suit of armor. No, this to me looks like a Warhawk, right? It's obviously some sort of weapon or something. That's what it would make me think of. So this makes sense. It's a Kansept, so you have to have the huge thing on there, and then it has to have this stupid number. Kansept, can you guys why do you guys have to do that? This big code, right? S35VN, totally fine. Doesn't need to be. At this geometry, this size of blade, right? Making it something more premium like M390 or Magna, like there's hardly a purpose for that. S35VN is probably a better choice, right? I mean, you could always make an argument for MagnaCut, I guess. It says Leviathan or Leviathan. That's what I used to say when I played Final Fantasy VIII. The first time I ever saw that word, I thought, well, that's obviously pronounced Leviathan. I think it's Leviathan. Yeah, that's what the original model was based off of. And then it says Warhawk knives, and then these are numbered, right? So like this one, I've actually never even looked at it. Number 90, I think is what that says. My eyesight is getting, every time I read to my kids at night, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to need reading glasses soon. Like I'm closing in on 38, and I'm going to need reading glasses soon. So that's fun. I always consider myself to have fantastic vision, but I don't want to get older, please. Anyways, the fit and finish on this is fantastic. The cutting edge is even all the way down, and it's big, and it's definitely thick behind the edge. What do I have? Let's get a piece of printer paper, and I'll just show you guys what a cut looks like with the factory edge. It'll slice for sure, but it's not a buttery smooth it's good. But you can see kind of the edges lifting. That's just the geometry. Obviously, you can sharpen this, and you can change the angle, and you can make it a little better if you want to. But it's got thick geometry from the factory. Sorry, a box of something fell down there. Yeah, it's just big and heavy. And I feel like recurve, like this type of hawkbill knife, it was fun tearing into packages with it, doing the pull cut and everything. I'm sure they're better at some things than others. I don't know. I can't necessarily say that the specific curvature of this blade changed a whole lot with what I do day to day. I was more focused on the raw, like just the size of this knife and the weight of it that's where my focus was all of the time, right? And yeah, you're lugging around a huge object. This is a lot to commit to, right? You can do it. It'll fit in your jeans pocket. It might not fit in every pocket. It'll fit in your jeans pocket, but it's a lot to commit to. Little backspacer back here. No lanyard hole, which I don't care about. Some people, you could always attach one to the pocket clip if you really wanted to. Maybe that's why it's like this. I don't know if I wish that... I feel like I wish that the pocket clip was a little shorter just for ergonomic comfort, but I think that would also stiffen it up a bit, so I don't know. The stop pin is actually internal and attached to the blade, so it rides on some channels that are carved out on either side of the titanium frame, which is good. Good lockup solidity, and keeps the ability to maintain smooth and solid action, centering, all that. No blade play up, down, left, or right at all. Solid as a rock. The tension on that lock bar is really holding it in place. As far as titanium frame locks go, which are far from the strongest locking system, I would say this one's probably on the stronger side, just with the amount. Like, it wants to stay. It does not want to move. I mean, it is aggressively unfriendly about it. It wants to stay underneath that blade. So it would take quite a bit of force to disengage it, but there's no movement. There's no up and down play or anything like that. Subtle hint of stick. That'll probably go away. No pivot lash. Very smooth and consistent in here, and an incredibly heavy detent. With, as far as I can tell, maybe is it off center? Boy, it's hard to tell. If it is, it's maybe slightly to the right, which can be adjusted, but I think it's center. Is this knife worth it? For the vast majority of people, no, because you're buying something that's more form, it's more design, it's more meant to cater towards people who like the big overbuilt aggressive stuff. And you are sacrificing a lot of convenience. It's not a convenient thing to carry around. It's huge and is way overkill. I mean, at this point, if you need this big of a cutting object, you probably need a fixed blade, right? And this is going to be weaker than a fixed blade, not going to be able to do as much. So if you're going to buy this knife, it's because you like how it looks, because you like big knives, right? Because they put a smile on your face when you hold them. And that's fine. That's why I buy a lot of big knives. I've got all different types. But this is a knife that I would buy just to put a smile on my face. And if that's why you're buying it, it will put a smile on your face. And honestly, for what this is and how it's made, right? Chinese, but premium Chinese manufacturing, contoured titanium, big chunks of everything, right? Pretty competitive at a base price of $238. I really have no problem with that price tag. This is not a knife that I would recommend for EDC. This is not a knife that I would recommend for daily carry of any type. It's just wacky huge, but it's fun, right? I do love this knife a lot, though, and I'm so happy to finally handle this Superhawk production version of the Warhawk knives, Leviathan. So let me be clear about this. I'm not putting it on my recommended knives playlist because I don't really recommend it for most people. It's specifically designed, and it makes sense. It's designed not for everybody, just for select people. So I'm not going to put it on that playlist. I am going to put it on my personal favorite knives of all time playlist because I'm keeping this. I'm not getting rid of this one, right? Everything that comes in, I give away the vast majority of stuff that comes in on this channel. I'm keeping this. I want this in my collection. I think this is awesome. So I'll let you guys make your decisions based on, everything all the information I gave you here today. But that's going to be it for today's video. Please, linked down in the description, obviously. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.